Hey guys, welcome back to another action figure review. Today we're checking out the long-awaited Necronominus Mythic Legions wave with the leader of the faction himself, Necronominus. In a double wide deluxe box, we can see the figure and all of its accessories that are included. Over at the back, we have some new full art on the wave, featuring each of the Four Horsemen, with Necronominus taking the center. Small pictures of the other figures in the wave can be seen here, and some additional lore at the bottom. A small profile of Necronominus is seen at the side, with a short paragraph on the lore of this character. Like all Mythic Legion figures, the packaging can be easily taken apart without having to tear it open, and can be used for storage. This deluxe box for the figure is layered in multiple trays, secured together by the plastic folded into each other. Necronominus is packed without his feet installed, as he takes up the entire height of the box, so you'll have to install them. It's a tight fit, so make sure to heat up the sockets. Necronominus is the god of the undead, leading his faction, the Congregation of Necronominus. As one of the Four Horsemen who have returned to conquer Mythos, Necronominus is the most powerful of the evil gods. And while the dark forces of evil have no true leader, the rest of the horsemen acknowledge Necronominus as the master of the domain of death, where all their powers eventually lead to. Using the powerful scythe weapon, the God Razor, a single touch of this blade would resurrect any fallen foe into a mindless soldier devoted to the Lord of Death and his many children. Wherever Necronominus heads, there is an army of undead that follows, and grows with every battle fought, adding more and more undead to his legion. Let's check out the details of the figure. Adorned with golden jewelry, a dirty skull is detailed with cracks, stains, and a hollow nose, with a large grin of teeth sculpted in a menacing way. Two golden orbs are inserted into the eye sockets, with a smaller third peeking out of the center of the crown on the top of the forehead. Different sizes of small golden bones stick out in every direction, forming a small fan of bones. The crown extends upward in a design made up of a golden spine, with ribs forming a cage all the way to the top. A large golden jaw can be seen here, bolted with rivets onto the side of the skull, detailed with its own teeth and a corroded finish. We have a better look at the helmet cage here, holding in feathers that are growing out of the back of the skull. Each feather is sculpted with its own feathery details, with both a brown and a black wash at the edges. At the very edge of the top, the helmet reaches a sharp point, with the last of the feathers fading into a brown color. A large skeletal sculpture is worn at the back, covering up the back of the head and the neck of the figure. Decorated with 3 silver skeletons with rib cages, golden wings surrounding them, and more bones pointing upward, all 3 bodies fuse into one point towards the bottom. Removing the head, we can see the collar from the other side, a row of golden bones pointing upward. The new exposed skeletal rib chest is used here, showing exposed ribs detailed with the small holes and stained weathered paint job. From the sides we have more golden decorations, 2 small decorated plates, with a row of small bones hanging downward. These long strands of bone hang all the way down to the ankles of the figure. Removing the neck collar, we have full view of the skeletal back made up of a large shoulder plates, and the spine going down the center, and 4 large sockets. The 2 smaller sockets up top are being covered by the armored collar, and the 2 larger sockets underneath are being used for the wings later on in the review. The neck collar also acts as the shoulder armor of the figure, with more golden feathers decorating the 2 layered blades of metal armor. Underneath we have a red fleshy appearance under each plate. The skeletal arms, while being simple, do have some details. Small grooves in the sculpting allows the paint wash to stain some of the deeper crevices on the bone. The armor at the wrist has a unique design. A small bird skull can be seen at the top, with a large screaming mouth design at the center, where the teeth and jaw can be seen. The skeletal hands are sculpted in the gripping pose, stained with the bone-colored wash, with each finger bone having its own sculpted details. A large metal belt buckle holds up the belt at the front, designed with 2 skulls merging into each other. Hanging underneath is another animal skull, with more large gold bones surrounding it. A tattered purple robe is worn underneath using a thick cloth design. Hanging all the way down to the ground, the cloth at the center is tattered and torn, a nice effect making it look as if it were being dragged. Hanging on the side we have a small metal vial with green liquid and the skull topper. More of those golden bones seen all over this figure is attached to this chain as well, in various sizes and some even broken. The layers of plate that make up the belt are free from clutter at the back, where we can see how they stack up over each other and the details like the rivets, waves in the sculpting, and a dirty black wash. A better look at the cloth skirt is seen completely covering up the backside. And just like the front, the cloth is torn and tattered at the bottom, giving the appearance of being dragged. We have the standard issue skeletal thighs here, with minimal detail other than a wash and some small grooves in the sculpting. Continuing with the theme of birds, we have a raven designed on the metal plate armor covering up the legs, detailed with a black eye, feathers, skeletal wings, and a leather clasp at the back of the leg. The skeletal feet we installed are exposed here, with each segment of bone sculpted with its own grooves and a light wash in this area. Let's check out the articulation. Starting off with the head, having such a huge helmet and neck collar is going to restrict most of the range you will get here. We can get a minimal amount of range of all the motion, and at the very least all the bones are made of a soft plastic, so they will slowly bend out of the way. But unfortunately, you're just not going to get most of the range out of this area. We have a similar situation with the shoulders. You can open up the shoulders and rotate, but the range is going to be blocked by that large collar and shoulder armor accessory. You can still bend it forward and get some decent range, just not as much as the bare skeleton. We have elbows that bend at a 90-degree angle and rotate, forearms that rotate, wrists that rotate and bend forward and back. The chest, just like the neck, is filled with so much armor. We have the standard rotation, but the crunching and pivot is very limited with such a large belt. A skeletal thigh that has no rotation, but the full range of forward motion. Opening the legs will have some resistance, but the soft plastic does bend out of the way. It also has the full range of motion backwards too when you move the robes out of the way. The knees bend back a decent amount. We have rotation at the knee, ankles that rotate and bend up and down, and a foot that twists. Similar to the anniversary skeleton using that new skeletal chest, Necronominus uses a lot of the same parts except for the pelvis and the exclusive forearms and leg armor sections. Both figures are compatible with the 1.0 style of Mythic Legions. We have the smaller 2.0 style skeleton, much smaller and shorter and only compatible with the same series of body type. Next to a standard Knight Legion builder, it's mostly that large headdress that gives Necronominus his large appearance. And the smaller 2.0 bodies have much smaller appearance, using shorter limbs, bodies, and heads than 1.0 figures. Taking a few 1/12 scale Hasbro figures to compare it to just shows Mythic Legions, even though they are in the same scale, are just way more chunky and larger than the average size figure. Jada toys being in the same 1/12 scale, but are more true to the height of each character, smaller figures in this wave really look tiny compared to Mythic Legions. McFarlane's 7-inch scale sorta fits into place with the chunky size of Mythic Legions. Even across other genres of characters, they all fit in very well. Cosmic Legions, the sci-fi version of Mythic Legions, are usually a bit taller thanks to the larger feet sculpt, body armor, and bigger heads thanks to that helmet size. But even these are compatible with Mythic Legions. First up for the accessories, we'll be taking the neck and shoulder armor off. Just like any other shoulder armor, the section it attaches is to both the shoulder sockets at the same time. The strands of bones can be rotated if needed. And the entire piece is made of a semi-soft plastic, with everything having a lot of room for stress. We have a very high quality cape to attach to the figure, black on the outside with a red swirling pattern on the inside, and detailed with small tears and jagged edges. The cloth also has metal wires built in for posing, and straps to the collar to attach to the figure. Installing the robe requires the neck armor to be installed. This is where you'll remove the strands of bone that have a very large peg with enough room to secure the cape into the collar of the figure. Afterwards, you can adjust and tuck in the cape, and use the metal wires to give it a hanging appearance. We have strands of red cloth, with a black pattern running down the streams of cloth. Every strand has a metal wire for posing built into the cloth, and each edge has a small hole to attach onto the armor. Just like the cape, you remove the pegs from the neck armor and stack the cloth holes on top of each other. Afterwards, you can once again adjust the metal wires in the cloth. We get a very large set of wings, each with 3 points of articulation and are much larger than the original wings. For comparison, we have the original set here and it is much smaller than the Necronominus version. Both wings have an extra set of bone to attach to the top. Each left and right wing has its own unique socket and peg, so they can't be attached wrong. Both the sockets of the pegs of the wings are very large and have teeth in them to give them a stable joint. Removing the body from the figure allows me to use my preferred method of loosening up the sockets, hot water. After heating up the sockets by running it under hot water for a few seconds, you'll easily be able to slide in the large pegs into the sockets. With the wings installed, the profile of the figure is much larger than before, and depending on the posing of the wings, while they do make the figure much more top heavy, these Mythic Legions can hold their own weight very well. We have Necronominus' signature weapon, the God Razor, a skeletal scythe. A nice detail on the scythe is the mini version of Necronominus holding its own scythe. Finishing up the accessories, we have a pair of skeletal hands in a grasping pose, and the same pair of grabbing hands that are pre-installed, only these bend upward and downward. Four Horsemen Studios really saved the best for last with Necronominus. He's absolutely packed with details, cloth, great paint, and just a wicked looking design. Necronominus feels like the end result of everything Four Horsemen have learned over the years of toy design. The imposing presence this figure has on your shelf absolutely dominates every other figure near it, and it's definitely a centerpiece to your collection of the undead forces. Now, I might be a little biased towards the skeleton figures, as they are my favorites out of the Mythic Legions, but Necronominus is one amazingly detailed and sculpted figure. The cloth on the figure is designed very well. Having the straps incorporate into the armor as a hidden design just really shows how well thought out the figure was designed. Equipped with a unique scythe, extra large bone wings, and all the unique parts to this figure, especially the fabric that just feels really high quality, the deluxe price for this figure is very fair. A figure adorned with this much armor, cloth, and jewelry, it's a shame that the articulation is hindered by all that armor. It's not much of an issue for me personally, as this character for me will just be an imposing leader standing there. The bright side of the soft plastic that they used here is that there's no real danger of accidentally breaking one of the small details like the small bones throughout the figure. I have to mention just how well the cloth was incorporated into the figure. It feels like everyone is starting to dip into putting some amount of cloth into their figures, but once again Four Horsemen is ahead of the curve, using multiple materials, metal wires, with the cape having 2 different patterns and a very impressive look. Skeleton figures done right, and Necronominus is one of the best Four Horsemen Studios has to offer. A very unique look, and will definitely stand out in anyone's collection. This combination of bright golds and undead skeletal bodies, along with the cloth wrapping around the figure, makes for a very good looking figure on the shelf. Pre-orders for this figure were almost 2 years ago now, so it's been a very long wait for this figure to arrive, and if you're just seeing this video, you'll have to pick one up at a third-party retailer or wait for an in-stock sale. Mythic Legions are made to order and are a bit of a pain if you miss out on some of them. Hopefully by the time this review is out, there'll be a few more available at official sources. Overall, this is one of the best looking skeleton figures out there, and if you're a fan of undead forces or just evil characters, Necronominus is not one to wait or skip out on. Definitely get your hands on this guy. Alright guys, that's it for this review. Leave a comment letting me know how you like this figure, subscribe or share this video with your friends to help out the channel.